Absolutely. In '07, I mean, it's a good comparison actually between '07 and '08 because they were both relatively warm years. You would like to think that despite the frost, the '07 was going to be the more long-lived of the wines.
Yep.
And '08 here in the Barossa Valley was, as everyone will tell you, was desperately hot. We had,
but you had that heat wave, basically. You had it all at the end, didn't you?
Yep, exactly right. We had 15 days straight above 35 degrees. And the issue with that is that at above 35 degrees, as you know, the vines shut down, 35 degrees Celsius, vines shut down. So there's no, they go into protective mode.
Yeah, they stop ripening berries.
They stop ripening berries, exactly.
Yeah.
Normally at night time they can start again, but the temperature didn't drop below 35 at night either on our vineyards. So they were shut down for 2 weeks.
That's tough.
Which was pretty tough. But again...
So did you wait through that? Did you wait through? A lot of people just picked.
Yeah.
And they panicked and picked.
Yeah.
So you waited through, and that's how you got it right.
That's right.
Because when I taste that, I've tasted some monsters from 2008.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I taste that, your tannins are right, your flavor compounds are right.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not the elegance of the people who picked before the heat wave. It's not the sort of more medium body style, because it was quite a cool vintage except for that heat wave.
Exactly, right in the middle, yeah.
So you waited until afterwards and you got the larger expression of fruit, the riper expression of fruit, but you did manage to get your tannins ripe and you did manage to get your flavor compounds.
Yeah, it's, as you said, when the vines shut down, what happens is you get, if it's really scorching hot, obviously you're getting ripening through dehydration, but your acid levels are going up as well. And that was always the concern. So I guess in a way I just I used a bit of intuition, and I just thought rather than harvesting when everyone else is and doing the panic, I'll leave it. So that is higher alcohol than the rest of the vintages. However, and it does have probably a bit of extra viscosity just because it has so much flavour there. But to me, it's still a pure example of 2008. There's not
I like it. I think it's a really well-made wine. It's I like it. It's one of my favorites in the lineup. Actually, it's a really nice wine, and it's it's a photograph in the glass of that vintage.
It is absolutely.
It tells the story.
Yeah. And that's a really good analogy actually, because that's exactly what I'm trying to do with each of these.
Yeah.
But that's a really good way of putting that 08, because quite often people taste it and they'll say that can't be from 2008, and I'll say, well, it is, it's 2008. Show them the bottle and it's 2008. For me, it's got some of the characteristics that I loved about 2008, but also it's got some issues, some flavours there that I sort of taste that remind me of the vintage. So for me, it really does take me back into 2008, which was just a challenge, and I think that is a great reward at the end of a tough vintage.
Well done. 2009, wow, we're back to the easy sailing.
Yeah, absolutely. All I did here was just, we sat out the front and drank pina coladas and let the wines make themselves.
Nice work if you can get it, that's all right. No, I like this style. We were just talking, Michael Hatcher's just over here in the corner, lingering. We were just talking, it's a very almost Cote Rôtie kind of vintage, or your expression of it. Not everybody's is the same as that, but you've got almost a floral lift to the wine, a really pretty perfume, and there's almost like an easy breezy character there.
Yeah.
Really serious in the mouth still. You get all the structure, you get all the flesh and everything else, but it's just pretty and effortless. And again, it speaks of that 2009 vintage.
It does.
You're drinking pina coladas, watching your
That's why
vines
it's pretty.
go.
Maybe a few of the lime slices might have dropped off in the ferment.
Yeah. No.
But no, it is. And 09, after 2008, because it was so difficult, 07 was tough, 08 was tough. We came out well with these, which are indicative. 09, as you said, it was, for me, the way I would describe 09 is pretty, because it was a pretty vintage. The floral characters are those sort of high tone notes that you'd almost, as we were talking about before, you'd almost sort of think there was a bit of Viognier or something in there just to give it that spark, but it is absolute pure Shiraz, 100% Shiraz. And it just shows the difference between a warm year and then a nice sort of mild year, and the different characteristics that it gives. And that's why I really want to have this sort of, the vintage opportunity to show what the fruit characteristics are vintage to vintage. Because for me at the moment, in terms of an easier vintage to make and a really like a gift of a vintage, I'd call it, that 09 is an absolute standout.
It's lovely. 2010, it's gonna be a blockbuster.
Yeah.
Really one to look out for in the markets out there. For me, it's a collector's wine. At the moment, it's not really showing an awful lot though. It's really
tight,
shut down, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's gone into that sort of hibernating mode, which is a good sign actually. As any great wine that's going to last a very long time at this stage in its life should do. It's not showing. an awful lot there on the nose. You have to really sort of hunt for it,
Yep.
pick out, but really well delineated aromas on there. You get to the palate, wow, it's built like a brick house.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's
Yep.
solid, lots and lots of fruit. You have to, as a wine critic, you're gonna have to focus, you know, to pull out all of the flavor compounds because they're so tightly wound at
Yeah.
the moment. But it's gonna be a beauty.
It is. And in 2010 again was, yeah, like I said, 09 was great. That was Pina Colada year. This was Pina Coladas followed by mojitos, really. It was a great vintage.
Mojito.
It was. And it really, the wine made itself, the grapes grew themselves. It was just, it was a blessing for us because after a few difficult years, 9 and 10 back to back was astounding. And 10, for me, as a vintage, these are, as I said, they all show their nuances and they all show their characteristics. But for me, the 10 was just the vintage that I'd love to make. I mean, I would love to have 2010 over and over again.
In terms of climate, it was just like steady Eddie. I mean, you did have a little bit of a heat spell early on in 2009.
Yep.
So it was a little bit swings and roundabouts.
Yeah,
and that certainly accounts for the differences that you get in aroma and taste profiles.
Yep.
Here, you just had a nice, steady, even growing season, maybe warm to slightly warm or something like that, but not hot, no heat spells, just as you say, nice and easy.
Absolutely, and good sort of groundwater as well. So in the growing season, we had some nice rainfall, which helped, which meant that probably the flavours of the 10 are more balanced and more generous than the 9, because just that natural ripening process of a healthy vine with great fruit on it just meant you had this absolute classic. So I reckon out of the range in another 15 years, that 10 will be one that we'll look back on and say that really is the quintessential.
Pretty special.
Yeah.
Pretty special stuff. And then 2011, again, very, very elegant, pretty expression from a difficult vintage. Still a lot of concentration there on the palate. More of that peppery, spicy spectrum and the red fruits on the nose. And the tannins, nice. I mean, nice rounded tannins. There's no hardness there, no bitterness there. So you've got a nice ripeness of tannins in there. But more of a medium-bodied style as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice drink now. Actually, I like it.
It is a nice drink now. I mean, that's been in bottle for about 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And 11, it was a difficult vintage. To the point of view, this is the only wine that I'm releasing for across all of my different products.
Yeah.
But again, it displays to me the absolute epitome of quality out of 11, because there were little patches of vineyard that we could make great wine. And there are some fantastic white wines out of 11 that you would have tasted. Some amazing Rieslings from Clare Valley and Eden Valley.
Yep.
Some whites were astounding. And some of the reds are absolutely beautiful as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. I've been really pleasantly surprised.
But stylistically, it was always going to be, because it was a cooler vintage, and we had quite heavy rainfall all the way through the vintage. There were issues with botrytis and with mould in some of the sections of the vineyard. But we just had to be very cautious. And the great thing about that is that the vineyard, or the 2 vineyards we sourced the fruit for Amon-Ra from, have about 16 different soil types. So there's a little bit of clay, there's a bit of sort of heavy loam, and then there's heavy sand and the sand over rock. And in that year, because obviously quite a bit of rainfall, the sand just performed beautifully. So it meant you could actually get ripeness of flavour despite the lower baume and despite the lower alcohol, and despite the fact that a lot of the wines you'll see in 11 probably don't have colour definition, but this just sort of developed it over time because it was still a very small crop. And,
it's really nice, deep colour.
It is a good reflection. I think it won't be the most long-lived out of these, but I certainly think it's worthy of its place in the lineup.
Yep, so do I. Great lineup. Okay, give us 1 2-minute spiel on 2012. What can we expect?
Well, there's a space here where we've got water.
Water.
Written. Well, I was going to show you a barrel sample of just one of the components of 2012, but I think what we'd do then is we would have spent the entire time talking about 2012.
Oh, okay.
Because it is, it's a vintage to behold. It is easily the best vintage I've ever made of any wines that I've made.
Okay, let's leave it as a cliffhanger there. Shall we?
We can.
Yeah, because the 2012 is a pretty special vintage here.
It was.
And if that's what we've got to look forward to next tasting.
Well, next tasting when you come back, I mean, again, they'll still be there in the lineup and looking fantastic, but there will be one particular standout, which will be 2012.
Very exciting. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Ben Glaetzer.